The ceremony itself takes 11 minutes. I have been asked that question before. How long? By family members who are trying to calibrate their grief against a clock, trying to understand how much time they will have with us before we fold the flag and hand it over and march away. 11 minutes. Sometimes 12 if the chaplain speaks at length. The bugler takes 2 minutes and 40 seconds. The rifle volley is under 30. 11 minutes for a man who served 32 years. My name is Private First Class Daniel Soren, and I am telling you this story not because I am the person you should be thinking about, but because I was the one standing at the head of the casket team when it happened, and I was the only one positioned to see the full sequence from beginning to end. The interment was for a retired sergeant major of the Army. I won't use his name because his family asked for privacy, and that request deserves more than a story on the internet. What I will tell you is that he had deployed 4 times, that his service record was the kind that made officers stand a little straighter when they read it, and that on the morning of his burial at Arlington, the weather was 40 degrees and intermittently raining, and the crowd of family and friends at the gravesite numbered 61 people. I know the number because it is in the ceremony record. I counted them myself before we stepped off. What the ceremony record does not contain is what happened at the gate. We had drawn a full honors detail, casket team, firing party, body bearers, bugler, and a representative from the sergeant major's original unit. A colonel in dress blues who had flown in from Fort Campbell the night before. The detail staged at the support facility at 07:30 and stepped off for the chapel at 08:05. At the gate checkpoint on the drive into the burial section, there is a standard identification process. Vehicles slow, credentials are verified, the detail passes through. It takes maybe 90 seconds on a normal day. On this morning, passenger vehicle had stopped at the checkpoint ahead of our procession. The driver was arguing with the gate attendant, a civilian contractor who manages vehicle access for that section. I couldn't hear the exchange clearly, but I could see the body language. The driver was gesturing, raised voice, repeated gestures toward the interior of the cemetery. The gate attendant was on a radio. The problem, as it was explained to me later, was that the driver had arrived at the wrong entrance for their section, was insisting, loudly, that the attendant simply let them through because they had a wreath to deliver for a separate ceremony happening in 40 minutes, and this entrance was faster. The attendant was explaining that vehicle routing for active interments had a strict protocol for exactly this reason, so that family motorcades and honors details were not delayed. The driver was not accepting this explanation. I was behind the wheel of the lead vehicle in our procession. Sergeant First Class Ames was in the right seat. We had been sitting for approximately 4 minutes. Ames said quietly, "What's the ETA on this?" I said I didn't know. He got out of the vehicle. I want to describe this correctly because I've replayed it many times, and the order of events matters. Sergeant First Class Marcus Ames, 14 years with the old guard, walked to the front of the checkpoint in his dress blues, every button aligned, white gloves, the blue and gold of the uniform completely correct, and he stood between the 2 vehicles. He did not raise his voice. He stood there, in the rain, and waited for the driver to notice him. The driver stopped mid-sentence. Ames said very quietly, "We have a family waiting." He didn't say anything else. He didn't explain what kind of family. He didn't invoke any authority. He said 5 words and let the uniform say the rest. The driver looked at Ames, then at the casket vehicle behind our procession, then back at Ames. Then the driver pulled the vehicle forward and moved it to the side access lane and turned off the engine. The gate opened. Our detail moved through. The ceremony ran 11 minutes and 20 seconds. The colonel from Fort Campbell stood at attention for the full duration, even after protocol would have allowed him to relax, which I noticed, and which I think about when I'm trying to understand what 32 years of service looks like from the inside. Sergeant First Class Ames folded the flag himself. The casket detail leader has that discretion, and he exercised it. He executed the fold the way I have seen it done perhaps 60 times, and it was the same every time, crisp, final, geometric, as if the flag itself were something being prepared for preservation. He walked to the widow. She was seated in the first chair, a woman in her late 60s who had not cried yet that morning, not at the chapel, not at the graveside, and I thought she might not, that she had perhaps moved through grief into something quieter and more absolute. Ames went to one knee in front of her and held the flag out at the prescribed angle and said the words. She cried then. I don't tell that part because it is dramatic. I tell it because of what Ames did next, which is not in any ceremony protocol. He stayed on one knee for exactly 4 seconds longer than required, not moving, not speaking, just present. Then he rose, returned to his position, and we marched off. Afterward, in the support facility, I asked him about the gait. He was removing his gloves with the methodical precision that 14 years of this work produces, and he looked at me when I asked, and he said, "That driver had somewhere to be." "So did the family," I said. "Yes," he said, "but the driver didn't know that yet." He folded the gloves and set them on the bench. "They know now." I thought about that for a while. I am still thinking about it. There is something about this work that I am still learning to hold correctly. The way it asks you to be the same in the rain and the sun, in front of 61 mourners, and in front of one, in the ceremony and at the gate, and in the 3 hours of preparation before anyone can see you. The sergeant major had 32 years of that. Ames is 14 in. I am 2.5. The driver moved the car because of 5 words in a uniform and the casket behind us in the rain. But they would not have moved for any of those things alone. What moved them was the accumulation, the sense of something that had been prepared for and maintained and carried through time, something that could not be hurried or rerouted around a side entrance, something that had been earned at a cost the driver understood, suddenly and completely the moment they stopped arguing and looked. 11 minutes, sometimes 12. It is enough time.